And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off.
Go ahead and say it, Ed. Go Dragons!
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
You like that? You like that?
F it. Jamar's down there somewhere.
The New Orleans Saints select Marcus Davenport.
No!
Splash Brothers. Yeah.
It's playoff. Keep going, Brace.
The playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Week, personally, I've done better.
Yep.
But we're going to try to get into this and maybe give y'all a little bit of information a little earlier in the week this week.
Yep. Apologies for last week, guys. We were trying to get an emergency podcast out with some key injuries that happened late in the weekend. We didn't quite get it all together to get it out, but that's something we're going to start working on, is getting some short pods out as big news hits. So be paying attention to our podcasts if toward maybe right before Sunday, just in case we put another short pod out with some late breaking news or some big news that hits that might be impactful for your fantasy team. So just be looking for that. Some news as far as in the NFL goes. We've got some big injuries and some suspensions that are coming up this week that we're going to cover. And then we've got several really big surprises in the NFL right now that a lot of people really didn't see coming, teams and players that are just kind of leading the way that I don't really think anybody was able to predict. I don't know about you, Josh, but I definitely did not see Tua, Carson Wentz, and
Joe Flacco?
Joe Flacco. Sorry, I went blank there. God bless you. Can't forget about old Joe. Leading the way in passing yards so far through 2 weeks. But we're going to jump right on into injuries now. And first one on the list is one I'm sure everybody's keeping tabs on here in Louisiana, is Alvin Kamara. He's got some a rib cartilage fracture, and he was limited last week. You know, a lot of people, including us, thought he had a good chance to go. And but he ended up being ruled out, which was probably a good thing for him healing up, because that injury's very painful and it takes a little while for that cartilage to heal. And if you keep getting banged up like those running backs do, it definitely can take longer than we would probably like as Saints fans to see him get back on the field.
Well, as Saints fans, we hated to miss him because we definitely needed him in that game.
We definitely did.
Which that was two great defensive teams playing each other.
Yes,
and,
yes, it was.
And Tampa Bay kind of got us at the end. But anytime you play one of them teams, a lot of your fantasy players probably won't do quite as good as they will.
That's right.
Facing other teams.
And both teams really look like they're still trying to get their groove for the season. You know, I think they'll both be a lot better by the next time they play for sure.
Yeah, Tom don't look quite like Tom right now,
No.
But you can bet when it comes close to the playoffs, assuming they're in the playoffs, but I think they will be, especially with the way their defense is playing right now.
That's right.
He'll be right there with the rest of the top 10.
Yep. Next guy on the list is Justin Herbert, who put on a spectacular performance as far as playing injured, and just one that you really don't see nowadays, gritting it out, playing with an injury there on Thursday Night Football. He's actually got the exact same injury Alvin Kamara has with rib cartilage fracture. It's one of those things, you know, a quarterback uses his torso to torque and throw the ball a little bit more than a running back has to use it, even though he gets hit. So we're going to have to watch this and see his practice status throughout the week. The good thing is he can get a localized block to help with the pain, and that could help him. But the ironic thing is that's how he got the starting job originally, was that oh heck, whenever he was a rookie, who was that quarterback ahead of him? Help me out here, Josh. He's been a traveling quarterback his whole career, and he's been a decent. Tyrod Taylor, God bless America. Tyrod Taylor had the same injury, got a block, and they actually punctured his lung and got hospitalized because go ahead.
Just one thing I'm going to say about that. He's actually suing the NFL over that right now.
He is for I think I read somewhere for $5 million. Which, I mean, honestly, I don't know a ton about a rib cartilage block. I know a fair amount about blocks in my field of work, but I don't know a lot about rib cartilage blocks. But I would think if you did go too deep to do a block, you could puncture a lung fairly easily. But you would think somebody that's doing it on professionals is probably pretty proficient at it, and probably I would not think be making those mistakes on a regular basis.
Well, he's actually not suing the NFL. I guess he's suing the Chargers.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm not sure about that, but I would think it would be the actual Chargers that he's probably, or the doctor. I mean, I don't know how that works.
Yeah, it looks like he's suing the Los Angeles Chargers team doctor. That's who he's suing. And either way, it's kind of ironic how that we're in this situation with Justin Herbert, and that's how he got his starting job originally. But either way, I don't think he's in any danger of losing his starting job, whether he gets that block and plays or if he doesn't play this week.
Yeah, and I say something about him. He's pretty tough.
Oh, no doubt.
He went to throw the ball or kind of like took a few steps and really couldn't even do it. The next play, he throws one of the hardest bullets I've ever seen.
To the guy. Hole. I mean, in
a hole.
Yep. Thread the needle.
I mean, it was a incredible pass.
Yep.
I mean, whether healthy or not, that was crazy.
Definitely. Next guy we got on the list is Mike Evans. I think as Saints and Louisiana fans and Saints fans go, I think we all know why he's getting suspended for 1 week. But those of you that aren't Saints fans that didn't catch it, I guess technically he didn't even start the fight, but he tried to jump in on it, and from what replays I seen, he pretty much kind of pushed/hit Marcus Lattimore when he wasn't looking. I mean, I think
they were taking up for their quarterback, old Tom Brady.
That's what they're saying, in which he looked like he was jawing pretty good at Marshawn Lattimore, but then I also seen another clip of it where it looked like Leonard Fournette actually hit Lattimore first, and then Mike Evans come in.
Well, that's kind of what I thought. To me, it looked like Fournette really started the whole thing, and he didn't even get in any trouble.
That's right. But
he actually got to stay in the game.
And that's crazy. But I think it has a lot to do with their history. Something tells me the refs were probably listening to them jawing a pretty good bit and pushing around, stuff that we don't see when they go to TV breaks. Those refs see it all, and they could probably feel that tension spiking and knew it was just a matter of time until something crazy happened where somebody got hurt or something serious. So, but
Tom Brady's pretty good himself about talking smack too.
Oh yeah, definitely. And but either way, they both got ejected. Mike Evans is getting suspended for this next week, week 3. So he is appealing it, but I doubt very seriously he's gonna get that overturned. But he is appealing it, so I guess you could keep an eye out just in case. But I would not be planning on having Mike Evans for week 3.
Well, then I guess we could go to the other wide receivers there in Tampa Bay.
I've got them all grouped right here next to each other this time. So we got Julio Jones next with a knee contusion. Honestly, this one really surprised me. I would have almost bet money he was going to suit up after getting a limited practice in. But knowing how much they needed him to play, but he did not suit up, which kind of worries me that this could be a little bit more serious than what what we were definitely thinking, but they're saying it's just a knee contusion, not a bone bruise, which is good. But I would be watching to see how he practices throughout the week. I would hope he'd be able to get out there, and I'm sure Tom Brady hopes he'll be able to get out there too.
Yeah, we were both pretty big on him coming in there, especially with the other injuries they had. You know,
I had him in 2 lineups ready to go, and I had to change him out Sunday morning, and that didn't play out too well for me either. Which I'll talk about that here in just a little bit. Next guy we got up is their third wide receiver or second, however you want to put it. It's Chris Godwin. He's got that hamstring injury still. He was out last week. I'd be watching to see if he practices and how he does this week. I would not get my hopes up to play. Initially, they said a 2 to 3 week injury. So I wouldn't hold my hopes up that he's going to be ready, but you never know. You know, we got surprised by a lot of things this weekend. But
I don't feel like they're going to rush him in.
Yeah.
With especially with the, coming off the knee injury also.
Yep. And
they need him for the playoff run.
And also kind of part of the news part of some of this, I don't know if you've seen, Josh, but Tampa Bay actually signed Cole Beasley to their practice squad, which is kind of, signed him today to their practice squad, which is kind of big news because you don't go and sign somebody like Cole Beasley if you don't intend on using him at some point or another, which also
he's a good receiver.
He is. And I think he's just going to be on that practice squad just in time to get up to speed and get in shape. And then, I mean, I don't know if we'll see him this weekend, but the kind of player that Cole Beasley seems like to me, he's probably not in that bad a shape. He's probably been sitting on go for somebody to call him since day one.
Well, I think after that last game and as many as hit Scotty Miller in the hands and he missed, he's probably ready for anybody that can catch a ball.
That's exactly right. And I don't know about you, Josh, but I know there are 2 individuals that come to mind whenever I see Cole Beasley and hear Cole Beasley play, and that is Wes Welker and Julian Edelman, because they seem a lot like similar type players, especially Wes Welker more than Edelman, but they all kind of are that shifty, smaller, not the best athlete, but good hands, smart route running wide receivers that Tom Brady really likes to throw to. So if he does get in there and get some chemistry going with Tom Brady, he could be somebody we're talking about later on to pick up.
Well, and I might be wrong about this, but Cole Beasley probably kind of got hung out to dry because of the COVID vaccine. If I remember right,
I do believe. I know he got a lot of grief, and there's a lot of people saying that he did not get re-signed because of that. Now I don't know that for sure, honestly. But
you don't just let a wide receiver as good as him go, and another team not pick him up unless something is going on.
That's right. So, and he's, he is a little older. He's 33, but you know what? That's the people. That's the players that Tom Brady likes, the ones that are seasoned veterans that he can count on, that he knows that they know exactly what to do in game time situations and what he wants them to do. So
I was kind of surprised that Dallas, being as he played there for years, didn't try to re-sign him. And this year.
I'm right there with you. Honestly, there's him, and then who was it? Josh Gordon. I could have seen them making a splash before because they've been hurting for a while, and he wasn't signed until right before the season. And then now, heck, he's in. I believe he's in Tennessee. Is it? No, he's not in Tennessee. I seen him play this weekend. Who is he playing for?
So he actually signed?
Yeah, no, he's on. He played this weekend.
Really?
Yeah, hang on. Because somebody threw a pass, it hit him in his hands. Yeah, he's at Tennessee. Yeah, he had one target. I remember because they were getting blown. The doors were getting blown off, and it was like the end of the third quarter. Malik Willis come in, fired a bullet.
They pretty much took all their starters out.
Oh yeah. And fired a bullet over the middle and hit him in his hands. And then that was the only target he's seen the rest of the game. Poor guy. But he's back in the league.
He probably won't be on the team long.
Well, hey, look, if anybody's hurting for wide receivers too, Tennessee, boy, they are hurting big time because I don't think any of them had more than 4 catches again this week. So,
Yeah.
But moving on.
That team's hurting.
Definitely. Next guy, James Conner, went out with an ankle injury. This one hurt me pretty bad personally. I have him in like 2 leagues, and
I got him in one myself.
He's my RB2 in 2 of them, and he definitely did not help me. There was a couple injuries that hurt me pretty good this week, but they don't believe it's severe, which is good. That means it's not a high ankle sprain, which normally takes multiple weeks to come back from. Some people even said that it was so close to the end of the game that they thought he could have come back in if it wouldn't have been, if he'd have had a little bit more time to kind of loosen it up and warm it up. But either way,
they wasn't gonna run the ball any at the end of that game anyway.
And they don't think it's gonna be long term. He might not be back this weekend. I just see how he practices and what they say. Next guy.
Yeah, he's pretty tough, but he's definitely injury prone.
Yeah, he's had his fair share. I always try to have his backup wherever, if I'm ever playing him. And honestly, I've had him several years back, even way back when he was at Pittsburgh. Yeah. And I always try to have his backup because you just never know. And he's one of those guys, he might go out for you in a week, and then he might be back the next week, or he'll miss 1 week, and then he'll come back and he won't miss another week for the rest of the year. But you know, it's always going to happen sometime or another over the season. He's going to miss a game or 2, but we'll
be talking about his backups here in a minute.
That's right. Next guy we got is Michael Pittman, out with that quad injury that kind of snuck up on us. He got ruled out. Actually, did he get ruled out Saturday? I think is what I seen. And
it was either after practice Friday or Saturday. Yeah,
I think it was Saturday.
Late in the week.
And because he was one of the ones I was definitely trying to get my emergency pod going for, and kind of let people know, because, you know, he's so widely owned, and a lot of people are really, you know, I mean, I know a ton of people, they drafted him as their wide receiver 1. And I was trying to get a pod together, which I'm going to be better about that, getting those type of injuries out there to our listeners, and hopefully letting them know so they can make preparations before the game. But right now, they did interview the coach today. He said he's making good progress. He could play this weekend, but they don't know. It's still too soon to tell. So just keep an eye. I would definitely just be watching to see how he's practicing and make sure he doesn't have a setback or anything like that. But they definitely were struggling mightily without him, and I'm sure they'll be glad to get him back, because they also didn't have Alec Pierce, their number 2, who was out with a concussion. So they were down their 1 and 2 wide receivers, and boy, could you tell with Matt Ryan's play.
Oh yeah.
Next guy we're talking about is Keenan Allen, out with a hamstring this past week. They actually ruled him out, I believe, fairly early. So that's never the best news, unless they were just trying to be cautious so they can get him back this week. I just keep tabs on his practice regimen this week and make sure if he does start ramping it up, he doesn't re-injure that hamstring, because he's got a fairly long list of hamstring injuries over his career. So they actually looked pretty decent, but I'll tell you, their offense didn't look as good as their defense did to me. Their defense looked like it might be the best defense in the league to me, even though they lost, but they were definitely giving Patrick Mahomes fits for about 3 quarters. And
the Mike
kept
Williams
him in the game enough, you know.
The Mike Williams owners was glad that Allen was out, because
they definitely
he had a
hit that
good first half anyway.
Yeah,
he didn't do much
enough.
in the second half.
Well, I would have taken that production for many of my players this week.
No doubt.
Next guy we got on the list was a pretty big one too, considering the positions, Dalton Schultz. I didn't even know about this one until I was reading about it today. I don't have him on any teams. So, but Dalton Schultz has got a PCL strain, which is one of the ligaments in the knee next to the ACL. It's not as serious, obviously, as an ACL or an LCL or an MCL. It can be worked through, but it's one of those that it really needs time to heal. And once it's healed, you're pretty much good to go. but if you don't ever let it heal, it's pretty painful, a lot of swelling, and a lot of reduction in your speed, and your cuts. But it can heal on its own. It's definitely not a surgical injury, but he's questionable. The good thing for him is they don't play till Monday night. Dr. Jerry Jones got up there and was saying that he thinks he's got a good chance to go, but we're just going to wait and see. So, we'll have to take that as it may, but he's questionable now. I'd keep an eye out on his practice regimen, but I would be willing to bet he definitely doesn't practice till the end of the week if he does.
Well, we've talked about this on the pod before, and on a Monday night game, if you have anybody that you can play you think is going to do pretty, you might want to go ahead and play them Sunday, because if it's a game time decision and it comes down to that,
that's exactly right.
And he don't play, and you have nobody left on your bench, then you might be in a bind.
And honestly, to me, I try to find somebody on that other team. That doesn't always work out like that, but they are playing the Giants. So chances are you probably don't have nobody owns their tight end in your league. Now, I'm not saying that you want to, but if you were in a pinch and you had to pick up a tight end, if you let the dice roll and he ended up getting ruled out, I mean, some points or a chance at some points is better than no points. So pick up I don't even know who the Giants' number one tight end is right now. Honestly.
I don't either. I guess you could go with the Dallas's backup too.
Yeah, and you could also kind of keep an eye whoever's been getting the most points in the most plays in behind Dalton Schultz. But just keep an eye on his status, and then cross your fingers, which we've got some waiver wire ads that you might want to stash on your bench just in case at the end of this show.
Yeah, there's some tight ends you definitely could stream, and I would probably play them over an injured tight end anyway.
Guys. That's right. Next guy, just thinning out the position a little bit more, George Kittle. Obviously didn't play last week with a groin injury, still hadn't practiced. I know I keep going back to it like on the last pod, but a grade 2 strain was what he was initially diagnosed with. That's at least a multi-week injury. I think right now we're sitting at like 2.5 weeks, I think is what they're estimating since it happened. So, he could be getting ready to go back out, but with a groin, you don't want to push it, because if you re-aggravate it, it's going to be even longer. So, I'd be watching his practice. I personally would still be kind of skeptical if he plays this week, but just keep an eye on his practice habits for the rest of the week. And then if you're wanting to play it safe, pick up one of these tight ends from the waiver wire that we're going to talk about here in a little bit and just kind of hang on to them until you know for sure. Let's see. Next guy we got is Jerry Jeudy. Got a rib injury. And, this is probably best case scenario for Jeudy because I was listening to this game when it happened. And they said he went down on his shoulder and injured his shoulder initially is what the announcers were saying. And then when I was going to check the injury report, it said it was his ribs. So that's really good news for him. He had x-rays done. They were negative, which means no broken ribs. Normally you can see if there's a cartilage separation on there. Depends on the severity of of it, if you can see it on the x-rays or not, but they're not saying anything about, a rib cartilage fracture like Herbert Kamara. So if I was a Jeudy owner, I'd be feeling pretty optimistic at this point, that as long as he doesn't have any damage that went unnoticed, I'd keep an eye out for any updates, but he should be able to come back by next weekend if he gets some practice in. Were you watching that game? Josh?
No, I wasn't.
I did not get to catch that, but apparently it was a slow going game for Denver's offense.
Yeah, their offense has not looked real good this year so far.
No, definitely not. Next guy on here was a big surprise. Another guy that I was wanting to get in on the emergency pod. Gabe Davis out with an ankle injury. Apparently heard it going through some non-contact drills Saturday, and they ruled him out pretty quick. Honestly, they said he was down. They said he was questionable, and then I seen another report from a beat writer that said they would lean more toward doubtful than questionable. And he didn't get ruled out till Monday, but there was several reports coming out saying that they felt he was very unlikely to play after this injury. I haven't seen any more about the injury as far as if it was like a high ankle injury or low ankle injury, if it's just something that they're thinking was a 1 week thing. But I'm hoping that they can update us sometime this week. Let's see.
Buffalo didn't miss a beat.
They did not. They did not. That's for sure. Let's see. I'm gonna look up this real quick, just see if they said anything.
Yeah, Diggs showed out with him not in there.
Yeah, and a lot of people, including myself, I thought Isaiah McKenzie or Dawson Knox would have had a little bit bigger game than they did. I mean, really, neither one of them had a big game period. But I just thought, some of those targets would have went elsewhere. But hey, I mean, if you're a Stefan Diggs owner, I'm sure you're not complaining about the massive day that he had for sure. But I'd be keeping an eye on his progress this week just to see, and hopefully he'll be able to make it back, because I know those owners that got him, they're planning on playing him where they drafted him at for sure. I know I was.
Yeah, I have him in a league too.
Yeah.
And we were both big on him going into the weekend.
We both had him as a start, and he did not start. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But next guy,
him and Julio Jones both.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. Next guy we got up on the list, he was a big surprise inactive also, J.K. Dobbins. I did not expect him to be a full workload for sure, but I thought with him getting full practices in Wednesday and Thursday, no setbacks, he would have had a good chance to play, but he was ruled inactive.
So did something happen to him?
No.
Did he re-injure something? Or did they just set him out?
What I've listened to and read today was that the coaches do not feel that he is back 100% yet, and they will not activate him until he's 100%. Even though he's practicing full, they just don't feel like that he's like 100% back to himself. So that's what I'm hearing, is that he's ready to go, but they are saying, they said Coach Harbaugh stated in an interview that Dobbins, that he actually used the words week to week last week, not day to day. So that's why some of the analysts were tempering their expectations. Some of them thought he had a good chance to play with being a full participant. But, I mean, apparently his knee injury was very extensive. Tore his ACL. I think he tore his MCL, and he tore his hamstring, which all connect kind of in the same area. And that's why his injury is taking a lot longer than, because it's not just an ACL, even though, that's what we get a lot of reported on is the ACL, because that's the most popular thing, that he has going on. But with those other injuries that were repaired as well, that's what's taking him so long.
Well, last week you mentioned too, if you have an ACL tear, the likelihood of you having a hamstring injury. Well, he already, right. That was part of that. So, that might be a lot to do with it, it's because it was like multiple things that happened.
And so, I mean, I'd keep an eye out, but he's one of those guys, you're probably not going to know if he's going to play unless the coach comes out and tells you, or he's active on the week. So, I mean, I just have somebody ready to put in for him if he's somebody you're counting on. And if not, just kind of let him hang out on the bench until he's ready, because when he is ready, he's going to be worth playing for sure.
Well, we talked about how Baltimore is like extra precautionary on their players, and really want them to,
that's Go ahead.
Which is good. And with the running back injuries they had over the last couple of years,
Yep.
They've been hurting for a number one.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I think Lamar Jackson owners are really enjoying them kind of being short on the running backs right now because he really showed out this past week. I know I played him in 3 leagues.
Yeah. Well, and he seems to they're throwing the ball a lot more too, and I don't know if that has anything to do with the running backs or they're.
I really think it does, honestly. Because I mean, they could be just letting him go, because it's working. But
yeah,
I mean, honestly, if the guys you're handing off to, if you're just not confident in their running ability, you kind of give them a little bit of work, keep the defense guessing. But primary game plan is going to be to let your star quarterback, throw the ball. So, and
he was by far the best rusher in the game. He had over 100 yards, which I know one of them was on a big play.
Yep.
A 70-something yard touchdown.
75-yard touchdown pass to Rashad Bateman.
I'm talking about, didn't he run one in for?
Let me see if he had
for like 70-something yards.
Man, it
was a long run.
I know I kept checking every time I refreshed my screen. He had another touchdown, it seemed like.
Yeah, he ran one in, and I'm pretty sure it was because he had over 100 yards.
Yeah, he had 119 yards and a touchdown, and he had a 79-yard touchdown run in the third
that's
quarter.
and pretty much ran off and left everybody.
Yeah, and I mean, and honestly, every time I see him play, when he's running, it's almost like everybody else is in like half speed.
Yeah.
It's really amazing to watch him run. But anyway. Next guy and last guy on the injury report this week. This is a big one. One of those that unless you lived under a rock, heck, they might even had it on the news. Even if you do live under a rock, Trey Lance broke his ankle. I believe it was in the first quarter, and he's done for the season-ending ankle surgery. They said he broke his fibula, which is the outside part of your ankle, and ruptured some tendons in his ankle as well. They said it was a very similar injury to Dak Prescott's. So they're expecting kind of a similar timeline as far as that goes for him to recover. So if you were playing and kind of followed his injury back when it happened, it's going to take a hot minute. And even when he does come back, he's probably not going to be 100% yet.
He might not only be out for the year, but I mean, his career's in jeopardy, also,
I mean,
and if he can't run,
that's
the thing that he does, and it was gonna help him.
Yep.
And because his passing was definitely, not his best part of his game.
Well,
so his career might be in jeopardy after this injury.
And somebody who it kind of reminds me of, which he's got a better arm than this guy, but somebody that kind of happened to who was up and coming like that and had his knee blown out was Teddy Bridgewater. When he was playing up there, I believe it was in Minnesota when it happened.
Yeah.
And he was a very similar, primarily rushing quarterback, super fast. Honestly, he was Lamar Jackson before Lamar Jackson because he went to Louisville also. I'm pretty sure anyway, but he blew his knee out. And then ever since then, he was not the same. And he worked on his passing and actually became a pretty solid, he became a starter for some places, but I think everybody would agree he was more of a really solid backup than anything else. But I mean, primary backups have their place in the NFL as we're seeing right now. When you got several of them starting right now, that teams are glad they got a good solid backup to kind of help carry the load until their stars get back.
Yeah, that Bridgewater injury was nasty.
Yeah, I was watching that game when it happened, and it was pretty gruesome, that's for sure. But anyway, hopefully, Trey Lance will bounce back, and he's got the arm to be a passing quarterback if he needs to be. So maybe that's something he has to work on when he comes back if he's still not able to run like he wants to, But that pretty much wraps up our injuries for the week. We're going to move on to our waiver wire for this week upcoming. Kind of got a list going for 5 running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, quarterbacks, and then just a couple defenses and kickers to talk about, just to kind of give some insight on guys that we think might be worth something. Some of them are short-term starts, some of them are long-term, stashes. Really just depends on the player and what you need at the position. Also depends on your type of league. If you're in a standard league or PPR, primarily what we talk about is PPR. I don't really honestly know anybody in a standard league anymore. I don't know if you do, Josh.
No, I've never played a standard league.
I've never played, and I don't know anybody in a standard league anymore. I know a lot of people that play fantasy football. I know that they still talk about them, but I don't know anybody in them. So, but if you do play in a standard league, you kind of adjust your expectations for, these pass catchers. But we'll go over these. All these players are owned in less than 60% of ESPN leagues. And we're just going to get started with running backs. And number one really kind of surprised me, but he's got the talent, and that's Raheem Mostert. Come out and really ran all over Baltimore this past week and surprised me because I thought Chase Edmonds was going to be the guy, and Raheem Mostert's the guy right now.
Well, I've always liked Mostert.
Yep.
He's so fast. He played at San Francisco, so the coach, knew him from there.
Yep.
He really liked him. The problem with him is injuries through the years. He's had a lot of hamstring issues, which a lot of fast guys do.
Yep.
But if he's healthy, with this team, he could really be used. And I probably wouldn't start Chase Edmonds anymore unless something changes. But Mostert, if I keep an eye on him, he could be worth starting later on.
Definitely
in the
a
year.
flex play. Definitely a flex play. If especially good matchup this week, man. I mean, honestly, their offense is clicking right now, but they're playing Buffalo this week. Buffalo's actually not as good against the run as you would think. They're actually allowing a fair amount against the run, but the pass is where they're really not allowing much going out against the pass. But against the run, they're actually allowing a little bit more than you would think. He's right now, I think they got him going for getting, let me pull up his points here.
Well, Mostert's always been good for a big play. And you just never know. He could break one off this week. I mean, you never know when that's going to happen, but he could definitely take it to the house at any time.
Yep. And ESPN's got him for 9 points this week. I mean, and honestly, he caught 3 passes last week, which I thought, if anything coming in, Mostert would get the handoffs, Edmonds would get the passes. Not so. Mostert out-touched him in both categories this week. So, I mean, he could get a couple passes out of the back for you, and it just takes, like you said, one little hole, and he's going to bust through it. Let's see. Next guy we got is J.D. McKissick. This one, I think a lot of people were kind of surprised by the usage this past week because a lot of people thought Antonio Gibson had kind of wrapped up that backfield. He's been getting a lot of targets and catches and pretty much all the handoffs in the backfield there in Washington. And including week 1 when McKissick was there, but this past week, McKissick was back to his old self, had 7 catches, and let me see how many targets he had. Yep, had 7 catches, 7 targets. He even got 3 handoffs, which he didn't do much for those, but that's not really his thing. But 7 catches for 54 yards. And, I mean, honestly, you're 1 touchdown short of, talking about him being a top 20 running back. Actually, honestly, if he'd got a touchdown as bad as running backs were this week, he might be a top 10 running back.
It definitely probably would have.
And I think maybe week 1, because he was coming into the year a little banged up, maybe they were laying off of him a hair just to make sure he was back 100%. But if he's back to his old ways, he's looking, probably 5 targets as a floor. 5 catches as a floor each week with Washington's offense.
The problem there is you got Robinson coming back in a few weeks, so they're going to have 3 running backs. So I don't know that any of them could actually be started because they're going to be taking carries and catches away from each other.
And, I think when Robinson first comes back, that could be very well the case. But coming into the season, the game plan for them, what everybody was saying, which, who knows what the real game plan was, but the game plan is what the analysts and the beat writers were saying was Brian Robinson's going to lead the backfield with handoffs and JD McKissic's going to be the third down back, and right now Antonio Gibson's the leading the early down work and McKissic's the third down back. And I really think if Brian Robinson comes back, I think he's going to win that job back. And because Antonio Gibson's, his efficiency was pretty poor this past week, which is going right in line with how he was last year. And,
well, if I ain't mistaken, they were talking about using him on kickoff returns if Robinson panned out to be what they thought he was going to be.
And I heard somebody else say they talked about using him at slot receiver some because he was a receiver in college.
Yes,
and
he was.
So they talked about using him at slot receiver some to kind of get the ball in his hands, but not take it out of Brian Robinson and McKissic's hands in the backfield. So, and that kind of leads into my number 3 guy, Brian Robinson. I got JD McKissic on there. I mean, he's catching the ball. Brian Robinson's one. If he comes in and they said he's already back practicing, I mean, he's like just got shot 2 weeks ago, right? And the dude's already back out there, like running drills and lifting weights, and like he's back, but he's got to, they put him on the PUP list. He's got to sit out 2 more weeks. But I mean, he was getting drafted as a top 24 running back right before the season started. And he's probably sitting on your waiver wire somewhere. If you got a bench spot or an IR spot, if you got an IR spot and he's out there, pick him up, slide him in there and pick up somebody else.
So we actually had a draft.
Go ahead.
And as soon as the draft was over, the news come across.
Oh.
So somebody had drafted him pretty high.
Yeah.
And then we found out after the draft.
Yep.
But like you said, I have him I'm in 4 leagues, 2 leagues. I've got him. I picked him up late, got him on my IR. So I will be probably using him middle of the year.
Yep.
If all goes like it's supposed to.
Yeah. I mean, and I really think once he gets back and they get this backfield the way that they want it, I think he's a solid flex play. Both him and McKissic, the way they use both of them. I mean, I know last year I had Antonio Gibson in my flex pretty much all year, and he was not near as efficient as Brian Robinson looks. So, I mean, if he
Gibson's
gets
going to be the odd man out.
I definitely think so eventually. And like you said, it's probably going to be a 3-headed monster until Brian Robinson gets his game legs back. But once he does, I think it's going to kind of be a little bit like the Dameon Pierce situation. They're going to get him in there a little bit, probably not play him as much as they could. People are going to start asking questions. The next thing you know, he's going to get 15, 18 handoffs for, 70-something yards. And if he gets a touchdown, you're looking at a top 20 running back again, So I just keep an eye on him. That's why I got him there, because I think once he does come back, he could be very valuable for you, and not somebody, barring any more injuries, not somebody you're going to find in the future. 4th guy I got, and really you could go 4 and 5 with these 2 guys because I really have no idea which one's going to be the guy. I know which one I like more and which one they talked like they liked more, and that's Eno Benjamin at 4. Just because of the James Conner, we don't know. And we just talked about, it's always good to have his backup because the dude goes down, it seems like at some point every year. Eno Benjamin's supposed to be the pass catching back, even though Darrell Williams came in, caught a couple passes himself. So, I mean, I like Benjamin. He supposedly won the second job coming out of camp. And then Williams did get some work late in this game, but I will say it could have been because Darrell Williams is probably the better pass blocking back in this game, and they knew they were going to have to throw the ball more because they were playing from behind. But I mean, who knows?
It's going to be a split probably either way it goes. But one thing about Williams they did talk about is he'll probably get the goal line work.
Yep.
And last year Connor was what he have like lead the league running backs and touchdowns. Right. So if he's getting, most of those
Yeah.
carries, he could definitely score some touchdowns for you.
Yeah. And
So
honestly, yeah, go ahead.
So I it's kind of hard to pick between them, like you
Yeah.
said. Benjamin looks maybe the part, but I still, that's kind of a toss up. But with Connor, you need at least one of them.
And to give you an idea, and it could be just a straight split, but they
Yeah.
could be very flex worthy, whoever gets the touchdown, because looking at their after Connor went out, Eno Benjamin, 8 carries, 31 yards, 4 targets, 3 catches, 20 yards. Darrell Williams, 8 carries, 59 yards, definitely more efficient with a touchdown, and then 3 targets, 2 catches. So, Darrell Williams got
identical.
the touch. Yeah, Darrell Williams got the touchdown, so he comes out with 14 points, but Eno Benjamin had 8 points. Honestly, I would have took 8 points this past week out of several positions that I had. That really just blew me away how many people were just not involved in the game at all on some of the people.
Well, one thing I'll say is if you're watching this, it might be that Eno Benjamin's already gone.
Yep.
So, but you could always still pick up Williams. I know when waiver wires might be over before this gets out, or for some, but if he's gone and Williams there and you have a spot, you could always pick him up, and just see how it goes.
That's right. But that was all our running backs for this week. Moving on to our wide receivers, they're a little bit more barren, I would say. There's a couple guys that I like that were owned over more than 60%, which kind of surprised me. But the number one guy I got is based sheer off volume, is Sterling Shepard. Volume and chemistry. I mean, he was not a guy I was even looking at coming into the season. But I mean, back-to-back weeks. Last week, he only had 4 targets last week, but he had two big catches for 71 yards and touchdown. And coming into this week, a lot of the analysts were talking about his history of his chemistry with Daniel Jones in the past. When he does play, Daniel Jones looks for him. And we definitely seen that this week because he had 10 targets with 6 catches. Kind of an inefficient day with 34 yards. But, I mean, if you got a wide receiver that's getting 10 targets, even though he's got 6 catches for 34 yards, I mean, the only thing you're missing there, you throw a touchdown, and that's a flex play right there all day long, I like him. He's a veteran. He's coming back from an injury, but nothing too serious, and he looked very healthy. He's got a kind of a tough matchup against Dallas this upcoming week. But honestly, I mean, I think he's somebody that if you're, bye week's coming up and you need to throw somebody in your flex, I think he could definitely be somebody that's flex worthy with Daniel Jones throwing the ball. What I hear a lot of analysts say volume is king, and he's getting the volume in New York right now.
Oh, that's what you look for in fantasy football, volume. Whether it's carries or passes to you. I mean, that's what you're trying to find.
That's right. Next guy on the list we're going to talk about is Greg Dortch. I'll be honest, I had no idea who this guy was until last week. He jumped onto the scene. I wasn't 100% sure if it was a fluke or not. And after seeing him be even more efficient this week, not quite the targets, but definitely the points there, he's somebody that we definitely got to talk about with their injury concerns at wide receiver also there in Arizona. He had 4 targets, 4 receptions, but for 54 yards and touchdown. He's a small, compact wide receiver that's very explosive, very much like Rondale Moore. They move him all over the formation, but he definitely looks like a very explosive player. And the way Kyler Murray likes to throw the deep ball, he's somebody that could catch some big passes for him, at least until Hopkins or Rondale Moore come back. But some people are saying that he's impressed the coaching staff so much, he's going to have somewhat of a role even when they do come back, because he's been so key for them.
But Moore should be back pretty soon, if not this week.
Hang on, and I will update that. He wasn't quite up high enough on the ownership role, but let's see. He was inactive, still battling a hamstring injury. he suffered it just prior to week 1. So depending on the grade, which they didn't release to us, that information, depending on the grade, we could be looking another week like, George Kittle. But I mean, we're sitting here right at 2 weeks out. I would think, like you said, he's got a chance to be coming back. But either way, I mean, we're talking about waiver pickups. Either you're desperate or you're just trying to find somebody that could be a potential, flex or fill in for your bye weeks.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to be a home run guy that's going to win your season this year. But like we said, he's definitely somebody that can fill in for you and hopefully maybe help you out if you're in a bind. Next guy we got for number 3 pickup is Noah Brown. Another guy, I do remember hearing about him, some rumblings late coming out of camp, coming out of preseason, that he was looking a lot better than Jalen Tolbert, which shocked me because I was hearing a lot of good stuff, and I actually drafted Jalen Tolbert in a couple leagues. And but Noah Brown has definitely filled the Michael Gallup role these last couple weeks. If Michael Gallup does not come back this week, what they're saying, he has a chance. But once again, that's Dr. Jerry Jones speaking. So Lord knows if that's for real or not. But the first week, week 1, Noah Brown, 9 targets, 5 catches, 68 yards. This week, kind of more the same like we're talking about with everybody else. If they find the end zone, they're, definitely somebody you're happy you played. But he was 5 targets, 5 catches for 91 yards and touchdown, and that's with Rush. So with Cooper Rush in there leading the helm, and he's throwing in the ball, and must be throwing some pretty decent deep balls for 5 for 5 for 91. That's a 18.2 yard per catch average. So I don't know if you have anything to add about Noah Brown. He's somebody, until they get healthy, I think he's somebody that you could plug and play with and, fill in at your flex spot.
Yeah, especially with Rush being the quarterback there.
That's right.
When Dak gets back, they might not have the same chemistry.
Well, you say, but I mean, he had 9 targets in week 1, and Dak played a majority of that game. So, I mean, he was throwing the ball. Now, he wasn't catching them. Of course, I don't know if you watched most of that game like I did, but a lot of Dak's passes were you probably couldn't even fit inside a giant hula hoop. I mean, I've seen several of them that were very off target. So, but at least he was looking for him and throwing him the ball. And, he actually, I didn't know this, but just pulling up his page here, he went to a very high rated wide receiver college in Ohio State. I do not know
Really?
when. Yes. He graduated, looks like 5 years ago. He's been in the NFL, but he went to Ohio State, and I'll have to do some more research and find out who came out with him that kind of covered him up. But so he's coming from a big school. He could have a little bit more potential than we realize. He might be one of those guys who just shows up out of nowhere. Let's see. Next guy I got on the list is Corey Davis. This is sheer pretty much volume based right now. He didn't get as many passes last week as he did in the first week, but he's getting some of the big play passes that they're throwing down the field. Let's see. I'm going to pull up his stats here. I know if anybody else out there is like me, you hear the Jets offense and it just kind of, gives you the skin crawls because for so long they've been irrelevant. But I will say with Joe Flacco being up there as the number 3 passing quarterback in the league right now, they're making strides to be a better offensive team. And Corey Davis is one of the better athletes that you're going to find at the wide receiver position. And he's been in the league 5 years, comes from a pretty heralded wide receiver college in Western Michigan. There's been a fair amount of wide receiver in the league that have come out of Western Michigan. But week 1, he had 10 targets, 6 receptions for 77 yards. And then last week, he only had 4 targets, but 2 catches for 83 yards and a long touchdown. So, if you would have started him coming in at your flex, you'd have been happy. 13.7 points week 1, 17.3 in week 2. He looks like somebody, once again, just like the rest of these guys that could fill in for you. I don't know if he looks the same when Zach Wilson comes back. I know Zach Wilson did throw him the ball a fair amount last year, but he's got two other really good wide receivers, which on his team, and Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson, which are being pretty productive right now. But what that does mean is that he's going to start seeing probably the number 3 corner on the opposing defense, which is a great matchup for him. So
well, another thing with the Jets is most games they're probably going to be down.
Yep.
And they're probably going to need to throw the ball to catch up. So if they throw it around a lot, he could be okay. And you mentioned Garrett Wilson.
Yep.
He's probably picked up in most of your leagues.
Yeah, he was.
It wouldn't hurt.
Favorite.
It wouldn't hurt just to check because this guy could be a stud.
He was just over. I think he was like 68%, somewhere in there. I had him as number 1 because I just, what they say, I just assumed, and you know what they say about assuming. But I just assumed that he was under 60%. And then I went back and double checked to see some of his stats, and he was over 60. And I was highly disappointed that I did not get to list him as number 1 because he was also the number 1 rated rookie coming out of preseason, rookie wide receiver coming out of preseason, number 1 rated by Pro Fantasy Football Focus. Honestly, I used to not put as much stock into those ratings as I do now, but a lot of those players that are those guys got to be, they're getting really good at rating because a lot of those players that were highly rated are really starting to make some plays and splashes in the NFL. And those are some ratings that I'm starting to pay more and more attention to when I'm looking at fantasy players.
And the Jets really like this guy, and they're big on him. And there's a reason because
that's exactly right.
He's going to be the future of the Jets,
Yeah. And, that's what a lot of people were back and forth with the number 1 wide receivers in the league being in the draft being Drake London, Chris Olave, or Garrett Wilson. That was the 3. Nobody else was in the discussion for the number 1 wide receiver in the draft. It was those 3 were the best ones, and it was a toss-up who would be the best one. And, look what Drake London's doing. We all Saints fan know what Olave can do and what he's going to do. And, we're seeing glimpses of it here and there. And Garrett Wilson has that same potential. And that, I can pull up some of his stats that they're getting him the ball a lot. Let's see, 8 targets, 4 catches in week 1 for 52 yards. This past week, 14 targets, 8 catches for 102 yards and 2 touchdowns this past week. You're talking about the number 12 wide receiver in PPR right now. On the Jets,
I'll take anybody that gets 14 targets.
Any day of the week, that's for sure. And then last guy we got on the list, which is somebody I think you're going to have to be patient for. He's putting some production out there, but it seems like he's just taking a little bit longer to grasp the playbook. And then I guess just the dynamics of the NFL, and that's Treylon Burks. He's still, I think, only playing about 60% of the snaps, offensive snaps. But when he is out there, they're getting him the ball. They're running plays for him. First week, he had 5 targets, 3 catches, 55 yards. This past week, 6 targets, 4 catches, 47 yards, which it was a lot harder matchup this past week. They played Buffalo. And if anybody watched that game, I've seen a lot of memes and everything, it looked like the person controlling the Madden team just quit about halfway through the game because it was pretty much over and Titans gave up and put in all their backup players in the third quarter, like we're talking about, because Malik Willis came in. And that's something if we do see more of with Tennessee. Malik Willis and Treylon Burks had a good connection in camp and some in preseason together. And they're saying that also, some of the beat writers are saying Malik Willis and Treylon Burks just kind of have that chemistry already, being both rookies coming in at the same time. So if Tennessee continues to struggle and we start seeing more Malik Willis, I think that's going to be more big things for Treylon Burks. And I think they're just going to probably start feeding him the ball to see what they can do. But he's getting in there a little bit more. And hopefully Tannehill will keep trying to get him the ball. I think he's somebody that it could take another couple weeks. He's got a bye in week 6. but I think it could take a couple weeks. And he's actually got some really good matchups coming up. I mean, he's got Vegas, Indianapolis, who we just seen get smoked by Jacksonville, Washington, whose defense is not what everybody thought it was. Then he's got the Colts again, Houston, and then Kansas City, and then they go to Denver and Green Bay, which are a little bit tougher matchups. But I mean, he's got a good little stretch of some decent matchups if he gets some more time. And he's a big physical wide receiver that's very fast, and he's a matchup nightmare for just about any corner once he gets it figured out. Anything you want to add there, Josh? I know I'm just like rambling on on, killing it, and I'm just like, I gotta let Josh talk some.
No, you're fine. Keep going.
But anyway, that rounds out our wide receivers. Not a ton this week, but honestly, this next part, which is tight end help, is one that I'm honestly excited about. All 5 of these guys, after watching these games this week, they all got a lot of targets and seem to be fairly heavily involved, and they're pretty much out there in most leagues. I think I'd almost say they're definitely all out there in under 30%. I don't think I can say under 20, but under 30% leagues. And but we got to go number 1, who really showed out Thursday night. That's Gerald Everett. Both of us very high on him in the last pod.
Yep.
And he did not disappoint. And boy, I mean, him and Justin Herbert, I don't see many quarterbacks looking for their tight end as much as he did for him, especially when they were behind trying to come back. Now,
well, especially when he got hurt too,
And now
he was
maybe
really
that was
looking for him.
Keenan Allen being out, but he had some targets last week before Keenan Allen got hurt. Let me pull it up. Yeah, last week
I really like him.
He only had 4 targets, but he had 3 catches for 54 yards and a touchdown. He's definitely, I know he looked for him twice in the end zone specifically this past Thursday, and one of them was a bad one. He was gassed, and that ended up being the difference in the game. Ended up being an interception that Herbert threw for a touchdown to a rookie for Kansas City, but and I thought that might affect it a little bit. I was like, oh gosh, here we go. He's not going to go back to him. Man, next drive, first person he throws to is Gerald Everett. And he went back to him like 2 or 3 more times that drive after that mistake. And honestly, that shows you a lot of Herbert and Everett's chemistry and kind of trusting each other already. Like he was like, I got you, I know you kind of messed up on that route, cost me an interception for a touchdown, but I'm not giving up on you. And I think that's big, Now, we do need to see if Herbert's coming back this week, and that could play a factor, but Chase Daniel is there in Los Angeles, and he's one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league, and he's definitely the best paid. I'm not 100%
no
on the
doubt.
stats, but I think somebody had showed that he's made like, man, I want to say it was like 13 something million as a backup, or maybe it was 30 something million. I don't know, but he's made a lot of money, and he's only started like 3 games in his career, and he's only played in like 12. And
look up how much money he's made per hour.
That really should be in there. But he's been in the league 13 years. He's 35 years old, and anyway, we'll see if he ends up coming in. I know he hasn't played in quite some time, but he took 1 snap, and that was a handoff in this past game.
Yep, I remember that.
And so
as a guy that didn't take a tight end till late in a draft, because I felt like if you didn't get the top few, then there's no reason.
Yep.
I ended up with Cole Kmet in a couple of leagues, and I now have Gerald Everett in both of those leagues.
Me too.
I'm actually happy.
Yep.
And I believe Gerald Everett's going to end up being a top 10 tight end before the end of the year.
Well,
he might be at the lower end, but I really think he's going to end the year, and I think I'm going to be happy.
He's number 4 right now, so I don't think you can be upset about that. Let's see, moving on to next guy. I mean, he performed well, Hayden Hurst. Even with T. Higgins coming back miraculously from that concussion in less than a week, he came back, but Hayden Hurst was still heavily involved. and look good, you know. Let's see, get some stats here for y'all. Let's see. Yep. 7 targets, 5 catches. He's only got 24 yards, but he finds the end zone. Boom. There you go. A solid, probably top 5 tight end for the week if he finds the end zone. But that was 8 targets in week 1, 7 targets in week 2. I mean, like we were talking about earlier, you know, volume is king, and he's getting the volume, and they've got some pretty sweet looking matchups coming up. They got the Jets, Miami a little bit tougher, but then Baltimore, who's done, you know, not that great against the pass. So, but then you got New Orleans, but then Atlanta. So he's got some matchups coming up, and I know he's probably really got that one circled because he used to play for Baltimore and Atlanta, and he got drafted by Baltimore actually, and then he used to play for Atlanta, and I'd be willing to bet that he's got both those matchups circled on his calendar because
well, and the Bengals.
Yeah,
the Bengals really like to throw the ball.
Yep.
Also, and it don't look like they're going to be blowing a lot of teams out this year. So,
that's right.
You know, he's going to get some volume.
That's right. Next guy on the list, Logan Thomas. I talked about really liking this guy last week, and you know he's done it in the past, and he's doing it again right now with as much as Washington's throwing the ball. I mean, he's not blowing the doors off, but he's a top 10 tight end right now. Had 6 targets in week 1, 3 catches for 45 yards. Week 2, 5 targets, 3 catches, 37 yards, but he gets in the end zone with a touchdown. He's a really big guy, 6'6", 250, and Carson Wentz looks for him. And we know Carson Wentz likes throwing to his tight ends, you know. That's definitely something that's been well documented when he was in Philly. Not so much in Indianapolis, but honestly, he didn't really do much of anything in Indianapolis.
That's true.
But he's definitely throwing the ball around the yard, Washington, and Logan Thomas is a good athletic tight end. Now he's got to stay healthy. He's one of those guys that's got an injury every time you turn around. But if he stays healthy, I mean, I think, you know, he's another guy that could sneak into that top 10. And he was definitely being drafted as a top 10 tight end for several years in a row until he had a string of injuries for like the last year and a half, 2 years. But he's somebody I still like, and I think he's somebody you could pick up in most leagues and slot right in there.
He might be the most talented of this group,
and he definitely very well could be. Now he's probably the older too. He's 31, but like you said, he's probably the most talented. And Carson Wentz they're going to have to throw the ball because Washington's defense is not looking too hot, and their coach is letting them go. So I mean, I think that bodes well for that whole offense in general.
Washington players right now in fantasy are going off. That's for sure.
These next 2 guys are owned in, I think, probably less than 10% of leagues. They're really kind of starting to sneak in there as some fill-in plays and possibly injury plays. But the next guy I got on the list is Evan Ingram, primarily because he's starting to get more volume each week. We, you know, us as LSU fans probably remember him wreaking havoc on us at Ole Miss. But then he got drafted by the Giants, was pretty good in his rookie and second year. And then he had some injuries string along, and he was not too hot after that, and kind of got forgotten. And now
when he played though, he was good.
And well, I think, and honestly, I really think he was trying to play through some injuries because there were some games where he just did not look as explosive and athletic as he is. And but I think he's fully healthy now. He got shipped down here to Jacksonville last year. Didn't do much, but I think him and Trevor Lawrence have got some chemistry going. First week, 4 catches for 4 targets, 4 catches for 28 yards. Nothing crazy to write home about. But this past week against the Colts, when they were blowing them out, 8 targets, 7 catches, 46 yards. Another one of those stat lines. You throw a touchdown in there, here and there, I mean, you're looking at a solid tight end play. I know I would have took 11 points out of my tight end spot the first week where I had Cole Kmet any league. So
no doubt.
He's somebody, if you got him, you know, you could pick up. He's got a tough matchup this week against the Chargers, but then he's got Philly, Houston, Indianapolis, Giants, Denver. I mean, all of those not the best pass defenses. So, and definitely with his athleticism, I think he's a matchup nightmare for linebackers.
Yeah, it's all about health with him.
That's right. And then the last guy, one that our Saints fans are pretty familiar with, that I actually thought about listing him last time because he got some action in week 1, but he got a lot more action this past week, is Jawan Johnson for the Saints. He has been getting more involved in the passing game than I was anticipating. Let me pull up his stuff. He's like first week 5 targets, only 2 catches, but for 43 yards. And then this past week, 7 targets, 4 catches for 40 yards. And so Jameis is definitely looking for him a lot more than I was anticipating. And he's had some he had a tough matchup against Tampa Bay, which probably shows the lack of efficiency there. 7 targets and only 4 catches. But he's got Carolina coming up, Minnesota, Seattle, and then Cincinnati, then Arizona. I mean, some cakewalk matchups I'm hoping the Saints can take advantage of. And I know you as well as I, Josh, they are just not quite living up to the potential that they can. And I think as this offense opens up, I think we see a lot more efficiency and a lot more production out of all their offensive players.
Well, you just hate to see a great job on defense by the Saints not get rewarded,
definitely,
by the offense.
Definitely. And I do, and I don't have the stats right here, but I know for a fact Jameis threw to Jawan Johnson at least 3 times in the end zone in that game against Tampa Bay. And those are big red zone targets, and that just increases your chances of getting a touchdown catch. So he's not somebody that I like as much as the other guys on this list, but he's still somebody that could be a good fill-in for you if all those other guys are gone. He's a big athletic tight end, fairly young, only 26, out of Oregon, but he's one of those athletes that can catch and run the ball, and they're going to throw him the ball.
Well, probably the thing about him that I don't like as much as the other 4 is, to be honest, the quarterback situation.
Yeah, I completely agree.
If Jameis, is throwing a little better, he probably catches a couple of more of those.
Yep.
And the quarterbacks from these other guys are playing pretty good right now.
That's right. We just got to hope that turns around. So
yep.
Moving on to our quarterbacks, we can run through real quick. None of these guys are somebody I'm looking for long term, but if you're like me and had Trey Lance in 2 leagues, now he was only my starter in 1 league, but if you had Trey Lance, you're probably looking for anything positive to come out of last week. And a couple of these guys I think could help you out. If anything, if they don't get picked up, just pick up the ones each week that have the better matchups. Stream your quarterbacks on the way out. I mean, that's not always the best option, but there's so many good quarterbacks that are still out there that are putting up points as, top 15, top 10 quarterbacks each week right now.
Well, if you, like you said, if you had Trey Lance, which I did in 1 league.
Yep. And
a lot of teams is running, having 2 quarterbacks, 1 on their bench. I mean, there's not a lot left. So you're kind of stuck, with a rock and a hard place right here. So it might be that you have to stream a quarterback or and play matchups.
That's right.
But there's a couple of decent options here.
Yep. Number 1, got Jared Goff. Honestly, he used to be pretty efficient and pretty good when he was in at the Rams, and then he got shipped off to the quarterback wasteland in Detroit. And
this is a different Detroit team, though, I believe.
Yeah, and everybody kind of give up. And honestly, who would have thought we'd be talking about the Jets and the Detroit Lions having some of the better offenses so far in the NFL?
Yeah, really.
But I mean, he put up, it was only 15 points in week 1, but he threw for 215 yards, 2 touchdowns. But he had a fumble and an interception. So, you take off 4. So really, if he could cut the turnovers down, you're looking at about 19 points in week 1. This past week, 20 for 34, 256 yards, 4 touchdowns, no turnovers, 26 points against Washington. Honestly, I think
he has a
probably,
stud to throw it to.
He's got he does. And he's got a stud in the backfield to throw it to. And I honestly think that you're looking he's probably going to sit there right around there, around 20 points a week. And I think, if he could stay somewhere around there, you're looking at around a top 12 quarterback by the end of the year. And, could be higher if he ran, but he doesn't run. And, with quarterbacks in nowadays game, you're looking for that guy that runs at least for, 20, 30 yards a game to get you over that next tier. But I think if you had Lance, you could definitely do worse than trying to pass it off with Jared Goff, especially in this next little run he's got coming up. He's got Minnesota, Seattle, and then New England, which, New England could be a rough one, but they're really not playing up to New England standards right now. But their defense normally gets it going at some point or another. But he's got Minnesota and Seattle coming up. And I mean, we've seen a lot of points scored on both those teams so far this year. And I mean, that's 2 solid games that could help you out right there. And then maybe after those 2 games, look to move on to one of these other guys we're talking about.
Well, if you're scraping the bottom of the barrel, which you probably are if you're looking at quarterbacks, right now, hey, if you can get 20 points, like I said, 20 points out of one, you got to be happy and hope your other players pick him up.
Yep.
Because if you did,
if
you did have Lance, then you probably waited late to get one. So you're hoping that, maybe you have a couple of, other players that might be a little better than some of these other teams.
That's right. Number 2, Carson Wentz. He has the history just like Goff. Was in the running for an MVP race the year when he blew out his knee when he was in Philadelphia, was putting up points like crazy and running the ball. So he's got the potential for getting over that next hump with his rushes. But, he's been a little bit more inconsistent over the last several years, which has made people a little bit more hesitant to trust him. Based purely off points, I really wanted to put him 1, but I
actually like him.
Yeah,
probably better than anybody else on this list.
The only thing that really gets me is going back and looking. I've heard some of the analysts and I watched some highlights, and man, some of his passes are still just kind of Jameis Winston-esque. Like, it's like you see him throw the ball and it's like, what was that? He's got a guy wide open on a post route going out. He throws the ball and it's like 4 yards short into the dirt. And it's like, you're trying to figure out what happened after he threads the needle over the field for a 20-yard gain, right in between 2 defenders. But the thing is with him is the volume, right now. And if they keep it going like they are, which they've been in some shootouts, but week 1, 27 completions on 41 attempts for 313 yards, 4 touchdowns, had 2 interceptions. So you take those away, you're sitting there at over 30 points. But with the interceptions, 27 points. But he also had 6 rushes for 12 yards. And he's got the legs. He can move a little bit. But they're letting him throw the ball, and I don't think fantasy owners are going to complain if he's throwing it that much. Week 2 against Detroit in the shootout where they were playing from behind, 30 completions for 46 yards. 30 completions, 46 attempts, 337 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Only 2 rushes, but 23 yards on those 2 rushes. So he's still scrambling a little bit, but he also took 5 sacks and lost a fumble. You don't like to see him taking 5 sacks in a game because with his history, it's just a matter of time because he does have a little bit of a concussion history and, some other injuries here and there. But he's definitely one you could look at picking up. He's got some pretty sweet matchups coming up also. Philadelphia, Dallas, Tennessee, Chicago, and then Green Bay, which is a little bit tougher. But those next 4 are pretty solid matchups that are so far in this season that are giving up points. And like we just talked about, he's got a stable of playmakers also. I mean, Terry McLaurin going in the top 15 at wide receivers, and then Curtis Samuel just jumping out of nowhere, the number one waiver target probably over week one, and paid off. And then you got the rookie Jahan Dotson, who was the number 2 rated wide receiver for Pro Fantasy Football Focus behind Garrett Wilson. And he's sitting here every week catching 5 catches for a touchdown. So I think you do a lot worse than Carson Wentz. And it's another one of those offenses, Washington, who hasn't been that great over the last several years, but they're making a comeback. And I think he's somebody you can get to fill in. Let's see if you got anything to add on Carson Wentz there. I know, like you said, you like him. Probably.
Well, he's the first one I went to waiver wire looking for, and he was gone in every league actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm like you said, volume is what it's going to be with him. He might throw 40 or 50 passes.
Yep.
I mean, if he throws 10 that ain't nowhere close, but he hits 25 of them, we're about fantasy points and not wins and losses.
Yep.
In a game, so he could be a terrible, team for his player for his team at times, but as long as he puts points up, it don't matter.
That's right. Number 3 on this list is one a lot of the analysts are higher on than I am. But I do think he's worth noting because he's been pretty solid in 2 weeks, and that's Marcus Mariota. Plus, he has a really good matchup this week against Seattle. He's got one of the better rookie wide receivers coming into the season in Drake London, running around, creating plays all over the place for him. But he has looked pretty solid so far this year. Not quite as many points as the other 2, but what a lot of the analysts like is the rushing upside. First week, he had 12 rushes for 72 yards and a touchdown against the Saints. I think all the Saints probably made note of that. But he also threw the ball 33 times, 20 completions, 215 yards, no touchdowns. But he also had 2 fumbles on that game. It cost him 4 points that would have put him over the 20-something points. And he gave him about 23 points. Instead, he finished with 19 in week 1. Week 2.
I just feel if I'm throwing Marcus Mariota out there on my team, I'm probably not winning a championship this year.
No, well, and whenever you had Lance, like we just talked about, you're pretty much scraping the bottom of the barrel there. And but I mean, he only had 13 points last week, but he threw 26 times, ran 6 times, 16 yards. But Drake London looks good. Cordell Patterson looks good. He's still got Kyle Pitts, who they're not really getting involved as much as I was expecting. But
they're going to be behind in every game.
Yep, he's got a couple good matchups in Seattle and Cleveland coming up. Cleveland's giving up a fair amount of points to quarterbacks right now, as we've seen Joe Flacco come out of retirement and just throw all over them. But he's got 2 pretty solid matchups coming up that could, probably get you around that 17 to 20 point mark, somewhere there, if he can keep from turning the ball over. And I think they're going to have a decent chance. He's going to have a decent chance at helping you out, at least in jam. Could be somebody to stream if you got a matchup with one of these other guys you don't like going forward. This next guy could have been where in number 3 went to number 4. Honestly, for me, he's at number 4 just because of his matchup this week, and that's Trevor Lawrence. I like him a lot. He's taken steps forward. You can definitely tell Doug Peterson is rubbing off on him because he's starting to make some turns and make some throws, and his efficiency is getting better. And a lot of people forget, I believe Doug Peterson was the one that was there when Carson Wentz was drafted. And he was one of the ones that kind of helped make Carson Wentz what he was that year whenever he almost won an MVP. But he looked really good this past week, I thought, and what film I did see on him. But he plays the Chargers this week. So it's going to be a true test, not saying that Doug Peterson is not good enough to game plan for the Chargers, but I would put money that if Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes have a little bit of an issue against them, that Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson are probably going to have a little bit of an issue against them too.
Yeah, I agree.
And not to mention the Chargers are probably still a little bitter after that loss because they almost pulled it out against Kansas City, who is honestly kind of turned into one of their nemesis. They're one of their nemesis there because they've had some really good late games. Well, they've had some good like last minute. I remember, man, what year was it? I think it was last year or year before. They were playing and it went to overtime. And it was like whoever had the ball scored a touchdown. And it went to overtime. And then Kansas City won the toss. And Kansas City won because they scored a touchdown on that drive. And, and that was one of those where you just wanted to see Herbert get another chance. I remember the announcers talking about that.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they're talking about changing that rule. I don't think it goes into effect this year, but I think next year it's going to go into effect where both teams get a chance to score. So we'll see how that ends up planning out. But anyway, back to Lawrence.
Yeah, it's like Chargers. They to ever take that next step, it's got to go through Kansas City.
That's right.
They've got to beat Kansas City.
But back on task with Trevor Lawrence. Week 1 played Washington. He was all right, but he threw 42 times, 24 completions on 42 attempts. Had 1 touchdown, 1 interception, rushed the ball twice just for 4 yards. But, you get rid of that interception, you're looking at about 15 points. And then last week against Indianapolis, where they looked dominant, they were leading the whole game and probably ran the ball a lot more than they were planning on. But he had 25 completions for 30 attempts, which is extremely efficient. 235 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then 3 rushes for 11 yards. So really efficient game, 18.5 points. Not like, breaking the bank like Jared Goff, Carson Wentz were doing, but he's getting better and he has that pedigree and talent. One day we're going to be talking about him. I really think he's going to get there one day. We're going to be talking about him with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow. Because I remember when Josh Allen was at this stage. I remember when Buffalo drafted him, and I remember his first game when he played and he came running out there, and I was like, he was like a bull in a china shop, and you could just tell he just wasn't there. He wasn't ready yet. And then look at him now, playing backyard ball, dominating the best defenses in the league like it ain't nothing.
Well, they usually take a step that second year.
Yep.
And you see improvement, and you kind of know, is this guy going to make it or not?
That's right.
And I think that, they're surrounding him with some good young players, So actually the Jaguars as a team, should be better in a couple of years.
Yeah, and that's something else about him. He's got the weapons. You got Kirk, ETN, Zay Jones, who's making a resurgence. Then Marvin Jones is your number 3. Evan Ingram, who we just talked a little bit about, a real athletic pass-catching tight end. And then James Robinson, the thumper. He's been doing it every week. Got a good running game to
go with it.
He's been doing it every week. And then a solid quarterback offensive coach. He's somebody that, in Dynasty or Keeper League, I don't have at any because he went extremely high in all those drafts. But he was somebody that I really honestly have thought about trying to trade for at this point. But he's somebody I'd be looking for if you need a quarterback. And even if you don't need a quarterback, he's somebody you might want to pick up and put on your bench, because if he takes another step forward during this season, and he could be somebody that you might end up starting over, somebody you got starting right now. Because there's a lot of really star quarterbacks out there that aren't living up their potential. So, but moving on, our last guy, we already talked about him a little bit, and honestly, he's only on here off pure offensive potential because I'm about to give up hope on him, but that's Jameis Winston. He's still out there in a lot of leagues. He's got the offense to do it. It's just the question, can he do it? Can he make the plays? And can he make the decisions that he should to kind of get that offense going? We've seen him put up 300-yard, 3-touchdown games, but, he just has not looked comfortable yet at all, honestly. He looked
I think when you said the making decisions, to me, That's
Yep.
the biggest thing with him, because
Yep.
there's times when he's looking around and he just looks lost, and it's like, I don't know where to go with the ball.
That's right.
And then he just throws it and, to the last guy he sees, and that they pick it off. But his decision making is his biggest problem.
And personally, like, I get the numbers and his history and the potential, and that's why I put him on here, because he could figure it out. The switch could flip. I don't believe he will personally, but if it does, he's going to be somebody you wish you'd have picked up. Because
even when he was in Tampa Bay that year, where he had 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions, his actually fantasy numbers were great.
Yep. Yeah, I think he was a top 10 quarterback.
Yeah. So, he can be. Will he? That's a big question. But, at this point, if you're really searching, he might be worth a shot.
And he could be another one, kind of like Trevor Lawrence. You throw on your bench and you see if he takes that step or not. If you got the spot and you want to take that chance. If you got a bye week coming up, he might be somebody you throw on there. If he's got let's see, the first week of bye weeks is week 6. Let's see who he's got. And I'll tell you. Week 6, he's playing Cincinnati. So not the greatest matchup technically, but hey, Cooper Rush just put up a bunch of points on them. So who knows? And it's in the dome. So, if they're going to figure it out anywhere, they're going to figure it out at home in the dome. So,
it might be too that if you're in the situation like we are, where we don't have a quarterback at this point, you might, actually have to pick 2 of them up. And just kind of play which one you think is going to do better each week.
That's
because
right.
like you said, when you get to week 6 and people's trying to pick up somebody to fill in for a quarterback, there will be nobody
That's
there.
Right. And that really rounds out our quarterbacks and all our position players. I got 3 defenses and 4 kickers, but whatever. We'll just name who they're playing and who they're going up against, because there were several that I really thought had decent matchups that have been putting up points. But as far as defenses, number 1 for me, which a lot of the analysts are not liking, I'm hoping, going against the grain, I don't get burned on this, but I got the Eagles at Washington. After seeing what the Eagles did to Minnesota this past week, and in week 1, they had another good game also. Let's see. Week 1, they played Detroit, and Detroit's been playing well. They gave up 35 points, but they had interception, touchdown. So they had 7 points, but Minnesota, they only gave up 7 points, only gave up 264 total yards, and had 3 picks on Cousins, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. And now they're going to see Washington, where Carson Wentz has been turning the ball over at a fair clip, So, and not only that, but their offense is one of the best running offenses in the league. And what does a good running offense do? It shortens the game. So that means Washington's not going to see near as many possessions, not near as many chances to score the ball. I like the Eagles this week, and the analysts, a lot of them, I don't even think they have them in the top 10. I don't know why, but they don't. And
I like the Eagles on the year, because they have the easiest schedule of anybody. If you want a defense to stash on your bench to where you can play, depending on who they play, and like you said, they played lights out.
They did
the other night,
and they controlled the ball, controlled the time of possession. And if they can do that each week, that's great for that gives that defense a lot of rest, keeps them fresh, and when you can do that, they play a lot better against good offenses.
I'm like you. I was surprised they were like 10th.
Yeah.
They were low down, 9th or 10th, somewhere around there. Yep. I was really surprised.
And another one I got that's not ranked really high, but they've actually been turning the ball over a lot, is the Falcons defense, primarily this week because they're playing Seattle. And I think we all know how Seattle's offense has been doing, which is pretty terrible. And but they've been getting a lot of turnovers. The Falcons, let's see. And as much as it pains me to pull for the Falcons and something, obviously we know how they did against New Orleans: 4 sacks, forced fumble, and fumble recovery against us in week 1. But then against the Rams, a pretty prolific offense and coach, they gave up 31 points, but they had a sack, a forced fumble, 2 interceptions. and gave up only 337 yards, but that's 18 points worth, And I want to say, do they have a special teams touchdown? Let's see. It doesn't say on this sheet right here I got. But anyway, they had 18.5 points against the Rams this past week. Technically, they're the number 5 defense in the NFL right now, and they're playing Seattle. And I don't even think they were ranked very high this week. So either some of these analysts know something that I don't, or, maybe I don't know.
Well, a couple of years ago, they were in the Super Bowl with a great defense that was really young. And they, a lot of these players are still on this team. So, they still have a decent defense.
And I know they've got a top 5 corner in A.J. Terrell, and who he's going to be covering at Seattle. And then on the other side, their corner's not as good, but they also got some really athletic linebackers, and they're if they're getting turnovers, hey, and Seattle's, not a great efficient offense. I think you could do worse, and they're at Seattle, and I think they're projected for some not so great weather. Same thing with Eagles at Washington, and bad weather always brings more turnovers, it seems like, and slower games.
And less points.
That's right. So, and then number 3, Browns versus Pittsburgh. Now, this is the one that all the analysts are picking for number 1. I can see it, but honestly, I got burned by the Browns last week because I really like the Browns against the Jets, and who'd have thought that Flacco would throw for 4 touchdowns on them? But they're playing Pittsburgh, whose offense has looked very Seattle-esque too. So, and they're also playing on Thursday night, and kind of a little, I guess, side note as far as like just suspicious things. Thursday night games always seem like, they don't ever live up to the hype. It seems like players don't always perform as well as you think on Thursday night.
Well, they
games.
got less days of rest or time to prepare, in that game being on Thursday.
Yeah.
Coming off of a Sunday game.
I do say that coming off of a really good game of the Chargers versus Chiefs, but this is the Browns versus Pittsburgh. So
but Chargers versus Chiefs was that? Yeah, that was this past week, right?
It was Thursday, and it was it was a good Thursday night game. A lot of the main players played like they should, but Browns versus Pittsburgh, I got them on here. Browns are rated, I think, number 1 defense against them this week. I've got them number 3 because I like the other 2 matchups a little bit better, and they're not on Thursday night. But Pittsburgh has not looked good at all. Their offensive line is garbage, and Mitchell Trubisky's running for his life, and Najee Harris is doing all he can do to get you 10 points every week. So, but the Browns, they're moving the ball. Their run game's there, which will also shorten the game. If their defense can live up to the hype, then that could be a good play for you on Thursday. So, was there any other defenses or anything you wanted to add there, Josh?
Well, in most of our leagues, Dallas was still there.
Yep.
And I really like Dallas this week.
Yep. I like Dallas also, especially the way they played.
Micah Parsons is probably one of the best defensive players right now. All over the field, wreaking havoc.
Especially the way they played against Cincinnati last week. And the only reason I didn't list them there is because the Giants' offense has been better than Pittsburgh's offense. And I actually had Dallas there because I think they got a lot better chance for turnovers, but they only have 2 turnovers 1 turnover technically on the season. And Cleveland, I believe, has a few more than that. Let's see. Yeah, Cleveland has 3 turnovers on the season, but they're pretty much Dallas has got 1 more sack. But I like Dallas just as much as the next guy. And I think, it's the Giants, but it is at New York. But they look good against Cincinnati. And if they keep sacking them, that's just going to create chaos and turnovers. So, and Daniel Jones ain't afraid to throw the ball to the other team. That's for sure. So, but that pretty much wraps up our defenses there that we like to stream this week. And then just a few kickers to name. Ryan Suckup for Tampa Bay playing against Green Bay. I think he actually is the number 1 or number 2 kicker in the league right now, and he's under 60%. And they're playing against Green Bay, who's got a pretty decent run defense. And I think that he's got another chance to kick several field goals in this game. I think they moved the ball against Green Bay, but I think it's going to be honestly similar to the New Orleans Tampa Bay game, where it's going to be back and forth a lot and some field goals kicked. Number 2 kicker, Austin Seibert Siebert, it's Seibert, but it looks like Siebert, out of Detroit playing against Minnesota. He's actually, I think he's like the number 4. Let's see, number 4 kicker in the league right now.
Yeah, I like him this week too.
Yep.
I mean, Detroit's putting up points, so
yeah,
a kicker, if you're putting up points, you're going to be kicking the ball a lot more.
And actually, I lied. He's the number 13th kicker, but he had a really good week last week. He was 4 for 4 on extra points, and he was 2 for 2 on field goals. But one was 40, like a 45-yarder, and the other one was 30 to 39. But he's also one of the best so far in accuracy. He's missed only 1 extra point, and he hasn't missed a field goal yet, which is another reason. And they're playing Minnesota. I think Minnesota is going to be able to move the ball a fair amount. I think they're going to have to throw the ball and score the ball. So, and they're also playing at Minnesota in a dome, so you don't have to worry about the weather.
You always want to play in a dome with a kicker. That's right.
And right after that, which is where I got 4 is Greg Joseph from Minnesota against Detroit at Minnesota. I think, he is another top kicker playing in a dome and playing in a good offense. Is probably looking to bounce back a little bit after a poor showing last week. And he's got a chance to put up some points for you as well. And last but not least, I keep banging his drum. He didn't have as great a week last week as I'd hoped, but Cade York, he's playing against Pittsburgh at home in Cleveland, but Pittsburgh's got a pretty decent defense. I think it's one of those games where they're going to have to kick the ball more. I don't think they get as many touchdowns against Pittsburgh at home. I still think, Cleveland probably comes out with the win, but I think Cade York at least has 2 or 3 chances to kick some decent yard field goals, and they're not afraid to let him kick some deep ones. So, and actually he hasn't missed a field goal this year, but he missed 1 extra point, which is crazy. But he missed an extra point this past week. So I like Cade York this week too. And that if you got any kickers that you prefer, no, it's just kind of one of those things you just look at where they play and who you like, and that's that pretty much rounds out our waiver wires this week, and then that'll pretty much wrap up this show. Unless you got anything else to add, Josh, I think we can get this out there, and hopefully some of these players and these updates can help you out and help you out this week coming up.
Yep. So, well, good luck with y'all's games this week.
Yep. Good luck. And we'll be back. We've got another pod coming out. We're going to talk about our studs and duds and kind of recap over some of our missed calls from last week on our next pod. So be looking for it. Good luck, y'all, and God bless.